So you're living a double life. Are you keeping secrets? Are you literally creating an entire web of lies and deceit around your sexual behavior? Because that's, not cool. And that really shows that there's something going on here that's a problem. You've been hijacked because porn is a super normal stimulus. So it's like, in a way, you never had a chance. Like, you show this to anyone's brain and like, they're gone. That's just what's going to happen, right? 4 core beliefs of a sex addict. I'm a bad, unworthy person is 1. Number 2, if you really knew me, you wouldn't like me. Number 3 is I can never trust others to meet my needs. And number 4 is...
My guest today is Paul Lavergne. Paul is a registered psychotherapist and sexual recovery therapist with the American Association of Sex Addiction Therapists. He works out of Ontario, Canada, and is the clinical director of Turning Point Counseling. For the last 13 years, Paul has helped many men overcome compulsive sexual behaviors and also works with the partners of those who struggle. Paul trains other therapists in his 2-day intensive workshops and has been a keynote speaker, as well as appearing on radio, television, and other podcasts. He also hosts a YouTube channel where he interviews experts from around the world on a variety of topics related to his practice. In this episode, we discuss compulsive sexual behaviors, the impact of shame, and the importance of understanding your past experiences for effective healing and recovery. So, without further ado, please enjoy this conversation with Paul Lavergne.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Hi, I'm Jeremy Lipkowitz, and with over 12 years of meditation experience as a mindfulness trainer and coach for high performers, I've become obsessed with helping people break free from compulsive, unhealthy behaviors and addictions and step into a life of true freedom so that they can finally become their best selves and cultivate deeper and lasting fulfillment. I've created Unhooked, the Breaking Porn Addiction podcast, to give you simple, actionable, step-by-step strategies to master your mind and optimize your life. This is Unhooked. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Unhooked. I'm your host, Jeremy Lipkowitz, and I'm joined today by a very exciting guest, Paul Lavergne. Paul, welcome to the show.
Hi, Jeremy. Thanks for having me.
Nice to have you here. If you could just give a little brief overview of what you do and who you help for the listeners today, that'd be great.
Yeah, sure. So I'm a registered psychotherapist in practice in Ontario, Canada, in Peterborough, city of Peterborough. It's a really small, lovely city of 84,000, about an hour and a half east of Toronto. So I've been in practice for 13 years. I'm also a clinic director of Turning Point Counseling. It's a group practice that I'm just starting to get going after being on my own for 13 years. I'm expanding into a group practice. I've also done trainings for therapists. I treat a lot of what I call compulsive sexual behaviors. So, when people ask, when I'm chatting with someone in the grocery store and they ask what I do, I'm like, do you really want to know? So, compulsive porn use, masturbation, serial hookups, cheating, affairs, sexting, texting, strip clubs, escort, paying for sex, swinging, swapping, cam girls. That's what I call another day at the office. So I work with a lot of those behaviors, and I do kind of the normal counseling stuff too, with depression, anxiety, and stress, and sort of the normal mental health issues. But about 60%, I would say, of my clients struggle with some kind of compulsive sexual behavior. So that's my focus, my passion. I do trainings for therapists too. Up here in Canada, we're woefully uninformed in the mental health community about this problem. There's not a graduate program anywhere that gives any training, to my knowledge, on treating compulsive sexual behaviors. And it's probably one of the fastest growing problems that we've seen in the last 10 years. So I do some trainings on that. I got to reboot that. Since COVID, I haven't done any in-person training. So COVID kind of put a dent in that. But I want to reboot that. I really love it. Had lots of good feedback on that. Been a keynote speaker at conferences, been on radio, TV, podcasts, just talking about this. And I have a YouTube channel where I interview experts from the world. I think we have some mutual acquaintances on there. Maybe Mandy, Patera, Victoria Sinis, Melinda Tankard Rice, some mutual acquaintances. And I've talked to many other people people that have been in the porn industry, survivors of the porn industry, and people who have also shared on there about their own journey of recovery. So it's just a passion project of mine. And I like doing it. And I like coming on things like this and just having conversations with other like-minded people. So that's me.
Great. Yeah. And yeah, I guess for context for the listeners out there, I first saw I saw your stuff on Instagram and just really loved the way you were talking about this whole field. It felt very grounded in both compassion and research, so it was kind of a no nonsense approach, which in this field, there can be a lot of nonsense stuff out there on social media. And so I really liked seeing the way that you approach this. I'm curious, and I loved that you just came up with, that full list of all these various compulsive sexual behaviors that a lot of people might recognize. And I'm just curious for you, how do you define a compulsive sexual behavior? Because there's probably kind of a thin line between normal, healthy, just kind of a sexual experience and sexual kind of outlet. And so how do you define that compulsive part?
That's a great question. There's lots of tests you can get out there that are already been done by people smarter than me. When someone's coming in, usually I start with a real simple 4-question intake. So, have you tried to cut back and stop your sexual behaviors and failed? Yes or no? Have you continued in your sexual behaviors despite negative consequences? Yes or no? Is there tolerance and escalation in your sexual behaviors? And I explain that to them, yes or no. Do you experience a withdrawal? That's a tricky one sometimes, but there's usually a yes to that. And I'll work in some other ones too. Like a big one is, are you living a double life? Are you keeping secrets? Are you literally are you literally creating an entire web of lies and deceit around your sexual behavior? Because that's, not cool. And that really shows that there's something going on here that's a problem. Intrusive, persistent thoughts, so I'm not really hung up on the word addiction, and a lot of people play with that and throw it around, and there's no such thing as porn addiction. And, they have their, when I first came across that, Jeremy, I was literally like flabbergasted. I'm like, I didn't even know what to think about the people saying this, mental health professionals, right? A bit of that is a play on words. And here's how they work that. So, okay, if you're a cocaine addict, the cure is abstinence from cocaine. If you're a sex addict, then the cure must be abstinence from sex. So you can never have sex again. Of course, that's absurd. So therefore, there's no such thing as a sex addiction. That's kind of the reasoning, right? Have you heard this have you heard this before?
Yeah. I usually hear it in the vein of, people saying, oh, porn can't be an addiction or sex can't be an addiction. And it usually seems to come from people who are kind of on the more liberal, kind of woke side, who think that by talking about sex or porn as an addiction, they think that you're shaming sexuality. And it's more of a misinterpretation. That they don't understand the nuances that, hey, you can actually celebrate sexuality and have healthy sexuality. And you can also
100%.
have an addiction, addictive relationship with these things as well. And so that's kind of where I see it coming from.
Yeah, I agree. And it's either it's a red herring, like it's an irrelevant thing, or it's just a total straw man, right? Oh, sex addiction means that you're shaming and stigmatizing people. I'm like, and I shake my head. I'm like, what? I don't know who you're talking to, but I've never brought a guy in my office and go, okay, sit down, you piece of shit. I just want you to know how shameful you are for watching pornography. Let's start off the session with that, okay? Are we clear here that you're a bad person? Like, as if we say that to people, right?
Yeah.
Trust me, they've already done enough of a job shaming themselves before I see them.
Yeah.
I'm all about getting rid of the shame right from day one, right? I'll get guys to say out loud, I am not a bad person because I look at pornography. And some of them will start crying. Jeremy, it's like the shame's so bad, right?
Yeah. And it's so interesting.
So
that really is one of the biggest negative impacts of this compulsive behavior or addiction, whatever you want to call it, is just the way that people can build these stories of shame and really take it to heart that they're a bad person. And I think so much of the work that I definitely do, and I imagine it's the work you do, it sounds like it is just letting people know that they're not a bad person because they have desires because they've watched porn, any of these things.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the toughest guys to work with are the religious guys, the Christian guys,
Mm.
because they have, and I'm not saying anything bad about religion or Christians or whatever, love them all, but they got that extra layer. I'm a sinner. It's a sin. God hates me. God's mad at me.
Yeah.
They sometimes they can't even say that. Well,
Yeah.
I can't say that. I am a bad person. It's a sin. It's wrong. And so we have a conversation around that. So
Yeah. Very curious, what got you into this line of work? Like, what led you into the work of psychotherapy and healing people in this space?
yeah. I had a few careers in the past. So I worked in construction way back when I got married. Became a loan broker. Worked in finance. Got back into construction. Worked in the finance industry. I was a branch manager at a finance, doing loans, subprime lending, and things like that. So I have a wide range of careers, but always personally struggled with compulsive porn use since my first exposure at age 10. I have a very typical classic story, seeing Playboy at age 10, the magazines, and then evolving, like my relationship to porn evolved with the industry itself. So, started with magazines, and then they got more explicit, of course. And then the 80s hit. I'm a teenager in the 80s. VHS comes out. Oh my God, look at this, right? And then, DVDs and like the evolution of the technology in my generation, and well, yours too, is absolutely astounding. It's unprecedented in history.
Mm.
And porn has been right along with that. And then, of course, the internet changed everything. So I had a problematic relationship to porn. I'd say I was addicted to porn and other sexual behaviors for about 20 years, 25 years. And so I finally found a therapist that sort of knew what he was talking about. Most of the therapists I talked to were incompetent and completely unhelpful. He finally got me on the right track. He's the first guy that I ever went to that said to me, "You're a porn addict and you have extreme depression." So, Jeremy, as bizarre, I say this to clients all the time, it never entered my mind in 20 years. I am a porn addict. Never entered my mind. I thought addicts were the bums in the ditch with the needle sticking out of their arm, or you know what I mean? Like I had this stereotype of addicts, right?
Mm-hmm.
I was married. I had kids. I lived in Toronto. I had a great job. I owned a house there. We drove a nice car. I was like, I'm not that. So it never occurred to me. So that really rocked my world, and got me thinking, is he right? Like I can't really deny this is a problem. So long story short, I got into my recovery, and early in that, like just as I was starting that, I was sitting in the office with my wife at the time. I'm divorced and remarried, but my wife at the time, I was sitting there, and I had this weird thing happen to me. It was like everything sort of phased out of the room, like shaded.
Mm.
And what he was saying, I wasn't hearing it. It wasn't like quite like an out of body experience, but it was very weird, right? And a voice in my head, I wasn't hearing voices, just something in my head said, "There's nothing more important than what's happening here right now." And not specifically meaning me and my wife sitting there talking to him, but what was happening in the room. And you're going to do this for the rest of your life. That was what I left thinking, right?
Mm.
So I left thinking this, knowing this. I left knowing this. And I thought, well, like, what am I going to do? I got to go back to school and get training. So I did. And I'm just leaving out lots of details, but went back to school, got my master's degree, and got specialized training in sex addiction from American Association of Sex Addiction Therapists, Dr. Weiss out in Colorado. So he was my mentor, Dr. Doug Weiss, and started my practice and just grew from there.
Mm. I'm curious. I want to go back to that moment where you first realized that it might have been an addiction or a compulsive behavior, whatever you want to call it. When was the moment that it clicked for you? Because it sounds like it was a bit of a kind of came at you and you didn't even see it coming. But I'm curious about the moment where you really realized, this actually is causing a lot of harm in my life.
I know exactly the moment, Jeremy. I was sitting alone in my house in the basement, And the thought occurred to me, I cannot be home alone with a computer that has access to the internet and not watch pornography.
Mm. Mm. So like,
So in step language,
mhm.
and we admitted we were powerless over alcohol
Mhm.
and our lives had become unmanageable. I admitted I was powerless over pornography and my life had become unmanageable.
Mhm.
Now we could talk about the word powerless if you want or not, or we can leave it. I'm not, for me in that moment, that was ultimately true and couldn't have gone deeper for me than that at that moment. I'm also not a guy that's like, in 30 years, I'm going to be I'm Paul and I'm a sex addict, like once an addict, always an addict, that kind of thing. So I love the 12 steps because they've helped so many people, but I'm not, just for reference, like people
Yeah.
listening, I'm not a hardcore 12 step guy,
Yeah, I'm not a
but that was the moment.
I'm not a hardcore 12-step guy either. And it's interesting because
Yeah.
I've read a lot of stuff about 12 steps and I've read through the steps, and there's a lot of beauty in the steps themselves. And even just this one you're
It's
talking about,
beautiful.
like the
Yeah,
admitting you're
it's beautiful.
powerless over the thing. But
Yeah.
I also kind of have
Or-
a thing like, well, I don't want to keep telling myself that story that I'm always powerless against this thing. It's like,
Yeah.
maybe I was powerless when I was in the addiction, and now, I'm becoming a person that is no longer powerless against this. So we could have a whole podcast about the nuances of that, I imagine.
Oh, let's
Yeah.
book another one for the new year, okay?
Yeah. But I love that, that I always am so curious to talk to people, especially those of us who have gone through this experience, that moment of realization, because I think for so many of us, it's like crystal clear. We remember it so clearly, that moment when we realize, oh, this is a problem, and I actually can't keep living this way if I actually want to live a happy life or fulfilling life. So I'm curious, in terms of the schooling you did, so you got out of it, you realized you needed to break free, you realized you wanted to do this work, that there was something powerful in actually not just overcoming yourself, but helping others.
Yeah.
Was there anything in the schooling that you got that really changed your life, like really transformative about how you approach this issue?
No.
Mhm.
No. So I had a university degree and I realized, I have to get a master's. So I got a master's of counseling psychology, not anything in there about compulsive sexual behaviors at all. Because no one teaches anything about it. It was my training after I took with Dr. Weiss to become a sexual recovery therapist that really influenced me a lot. The other stuff probably, Jeremy, was helpful in terms of laying out, like when you do a master's level education, it's quite generalized. So you're looking at like different schools of thought and developmental psychology, one course on, brain physiology, CBT, the different modalities, talk therapy, DBT, solution focused narrative, but they don't really go deep into any of those sort of things, right? And trauma, probably one of the things I really realized early on, and actually from Dr. Weiss's teaching, is 85% of we'll just use the term sex addicts let's just use that because it's easier for now. But 85% of them have been sexually abused, and 90% will have some kind of emotional or physical or sexual abuse, right?
Wow.
So that was what led me to learn like more about how to deal with trauma and treat trauma when I realized that, because I did not know that when I got into this.
Mm-hmm.
So, and it's of course incredibly important.
Mm-hmm. What would you say? So I'm not super familiar with Dr. Weiss and their work. What would you say is at the core of that work?
Yeah, so he's a little bit more about the 12 steps, but Dr. Weiss, like for me personally, is just a no. He's a recovered addict like himself. He's a bit more of that old school Pat Carnes. You heard of Pat Carnes?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So real pioneer. Dr. Weiss, kind of a guru as well in this field. He's been doing it for like 35 years, but just a very no nonsense, straightforward, like loving and compassionate, but no bullshit. A lot of behavioral stuff, a lot of homework. Like you're going to do these things, and very focused on changing behaviors, right? Not just holding your hand and crying about your feelings. hey, there's a time and a place for that. Absolutely. Okay. But sometimes there's a time and a place for like, one of the things he always ingrained in us was believe behavior. He says, I believe what the addict does, not what he says. I don't believe what he tells me. I believe what he does. And this is the only hope partners have, by the way. When partners come to me and go, I don't even know, I don't believe him. I don't trust him. I don't know what to think. I said, well, you can believe behaviors. Does he go to a group? Does he go to therapy or coaching? Does he read books? Does he listen to podcasts? Is he accountable? Is he checking in? Is he being open and honest? Is he keeping his bottom lines? There's 8 things, all observable. You can watch and see if he's doing it, right? So I'd say probably from Dr. Weiss, that kind of approach is what I picked up on the most.
Yeah, just that no nonsense, like, this is actually a thing. You need to be serious about this. You need to just change your behaviors and start to be honest with yourself and be accountable to others.
Well, and I just thought of another thing too, is that the sexual history and the template was really key too, because I would have never thought of doing that. So he taught us about how we start from earliest memories and we do a complete history of a person's sexual experiences. And it's absolutely fascinating what you will find. And it really, I see the light go on for a lot of clients too, when they go through their history, because they don't put the pieces together, because everything they do in the way they act out, everything about their relationship to sex has its roots in their experiences in their first 18 years of life.
How do you go through? I imagine that you would have to go through that in a very mindful and conscientious way, like not just kind of bumble your way through it like a bull in a china shop, but how do you as a therapist go into that work of helping someone kind of go through their past experiences from childhood on?
I'm probably somewhat of a bull, Jeremy, sometimes. But it's like, okay, if you're my client, this is literally a conversation I would have. Okay, Jeremy, we're going to do a sexual history. So, the purpose of this is to, tie everything, connect the dots. And, when you first came to me, you said, you want to find out what the roots of this behavior was and why you are the way you are. So this is how we're going to find that out. So we're going to go 0 to 5. So in 0 to 5, what is your first memory of anything of a sexual experience, consensual or not consensual? And then it'll tell me. And then usually it's nothing. I'll say, okay, let's go 6 to 10. Well, when I was 8 years old, the neighbor came over and, the neighbor came over and he wanted to show me his, he pulled his pants down. We did, show me mine, show me yours kind of thing. Okay. All right. So, how old is he? Was same age. Okay. Was there touching? Okay. How did it feel? Did it feel weird? Did it feel sexual? Felt kind of weird. Did you tell anybody? No, I didn't tell anyone. Okay. So here's the first pairing of secrecy and sexuality. Okay. Now, let's go between 11 and 15. Well, when I was 11, the babysitter came over and, she would get me she'd lift up her shirt and get me to touch her breasts. So, okay. And so what was that? Well, that was a little bit exciting. Okay. And did you tell anyone? No. And what did she say to you? Well, she said, let's just keep this between ourselves and be a little secret. So now we have the pairing of excitement and secrecy and shame and, lying, like intentional deceit with sexuality. So you go through this and it's incredible because you just really, by the time they're done, it's like, there it is, all laid out.
It's like a fog lifted from the past. You just kind of see things clearly.
Yeah. So I just go like, it's almost very like, think of a police taking your statement.
And I'm curious, how does that help people heal? Like, what is the purpose of that?
Knowledge and awareness, insight and awareness, right? So, so a guy comes to me, he's like, ashamed. I like putting on women's underwear. Okay. I'm like, okay. So we go back and do a history. So we find out, raised by a single mom, alone a lot. She's lonely, needs not attended to. And he'd go into her bedroom just to, poke around, go in her drawers, see her underwear, pick them up. He'd feel close to her maybe. Like he was already forming a template of nurture and closeness with the feminine, with the mother, with underwear, right? So it's going in it's imprinting him, right? And then when I just explained, they're like, "Oh, I thought I was a fucking weirdo." Like, sorry, are we allowed to
Yeah,
swear?
yeah,
Are we
yeah.
allowed to
All
swear
you
on this?
want. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I just, you know what I mean, though? They're
yeah,
like, "I thought I was a fucking weirdo," and my wife thinks I'm like, "What?" And I'm
yeah.
like, "No, it's like there, it is." You
Yeah, it just
see?
explains a lot. It lets some of the shame melt away that, oh, this
Yeah,
isn't just me being
yeah,
broken or perverted in some way. Like, oh, there's reasons why, this is the way it
yeah,
is right now.
yeah. So that I would say that's how it helps them because as coaching guys with this, many of them are emotionally, don't have a high emotional intelligence sometimes, or are stunted developmentally. They're emotionally stunted at a certain age, right? And tend to not be real in touch with their inner world because, the way they deal with emotions is I have a feeling, so I act out and it goes away and
Mm-hmm.
that works.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what they do for 10, 15, 20, 30 years,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
Yeah. It's so
Yeah.
interesting how so much of this work, it really does come down to emotional intelligence and learning how to work skillfully with your emotions, like how to not run
Yeah.
away from loneliness or boredom or
Yeah.
shame or whatever it is, but learning how to
Yeah.
actually welcome those emotions.
Yeah, so I think a history it does a few things. So it brings awareness, understanding, which can then allow self-compassion. It's like you were 8 years old, you were lonely, you missed your mother. Stop beating yourself up for being a weird pervert.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, and then then that I remember some Dr. Weiss taught us too. He says, in a session, you can give people an information or you can give them an experience. So by taking them back through that, and sometimes, yeah, it's painful, but there's no way to avoid the pain in the work,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
But like, what was that like? Being so lonely and that feeling like this was the only way that you could feel close to your mother. And we give them that experience of that. Is that what you're looking for now?
Mm-hmm.
Is this what's driving the behavior now? Right? Yeah, I think it is. Okay. So what can we do with that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. It reminds me of, I've had conversations with therapists who use a lot of internal family systems work and like looking at the parts.
A lot.
and
That stuff's
inner
great.
child.
I'm not really super trained in it, but that
Yeah.
stuff's great.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow.
Mhm.
What would you say? You talked a little bit about awareness and kind of self-awareness. I'm just curious what the role is of mindfulness in recovery in your eyes.
Huge. It's huge, right? So mindfulness is essentially like, okay, so early on, I explain to clients, let's say it's porn and sexting women and going on apps. Okay, that's the behavior. So I give them this cycle I go through. You probably have your own version of this, but this is just one I made up, right? And I say, listen, it's totally predictable. Every time you engage in the behavior, the same steps happen and they repeat every time. Okay. So it's something like trigger, euphoric recall, thought distortions, anticipatory excitement, altered state, you act out, and then you crash. And I break it all down. I explain to them and everyone goes, oh my God, it's like, are you a fly on my wall? This is my life. I'm like, aha. And I stress a lot of the neurochemical aspects of it early on, like just to, again, it's sort of like get them out of that shame. And it's like, listen, you are actually wired normally to be attracted to, attractive women or female beauty or other men. If you're gay, like, I don't care. It doesn't matter. But you've been hijacked because porn is a supernormal stimulus. I'm sure you use that word with people, right? So it's like, in a way, you never had a chance. Like you show this to anyone's brain and like, they're gone. That's just what's going to happen. Right. So once they understand, like, okay, here's the cycle and the same steps repeat, then we bring in so you have the trigger and then euphoric recall, thought distortions. Those are pretty easy to work through because you get guys to go like, okay, I've been telling myself this bullshit, like, it's no big deal. It'll just be 5 minutes. No, she'll never find out. I'm not really cheating. I'm not as bad as the child molester over there and blah, 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 blah. And then we just sort of restructure that, right? Like we reframe it, right? So that's not hard to do, but it's like, okay, listen, here's what I want you to do when you have the urge, because this is how I explain it. I don't know how you explain it, but it's like, while you were a kid and your parents divorced when you were 7, and then you were bullied at school, and then you didn't make the hockey team. Okay. And then you discovered pornography and masturbation. So here's what happened. You were lonely, bored, rejected, and felt inadequate, and you masturbated to porn to feel better. Okay. So you do that 1,000 times. So here's what happens is the loneliness and rejection is immediately followed up by the porn and the masturbation. So they get fused together. They get paired. So now when you feel lonely and rejected, it emerges like in your subjective experience as the urge to masturbate to pornography. Right. And I can tell you get that because you do this work, right?
Yeah.
That's like my head's blowing up for people that can't see the video here. Okay. And I'm like, so they're like, oh, okay, right. So now you got to slow down when you have the urge. And I give them a little formula like pause, breathe, reflect, or, something like that. What's going on? Ask yourself a series of questions. And essentially we're doing mindfulness, right? Oh, I have an urge to go look at pornography. Okay, let's just take a time out here. Okay, what's going on? Well, I have to give a presentation at work tomorrow. That's stressing me out. Oh, interesting. Okay, yeah. Yeah, and I had a little bit of a run-in with my wife earlier today, and we kind of left that hanging. So, okay, I see. Okay. Okay, so what can you do with that? Right? Well, take a walk, hit the weights, vent, chat with a friend, work it out in my own head, like just talk myself through it, I call those the remedies, right? So you have like the triggers and you have your remedies.
Yeah. But you need
Like,
to
what
first
do you do
get
with
that space in between so you can actually insert the remedy.
Right.
Yeah. Are you familiar with that
Right.
Viktor Frankl quote, between stimulus and response?
Yeah, between stimulus and response, there's a choice. There's a space.
Yeah.
A space, right? What is the exact quote? I don't think I got it right.
What's interesting is everyone calls it the Viktor Frankl quote, but it's actually not Viktor Frankl. It's actually Stephen Covey, who was summarizing the work of Dr. Viktor Frankl. But the
I've heard of him too.
Yeah. The quote is,
Yeah.
between stimulus and response, there's a space. And in that space is your power to choose your response. And in your
love
response
it.
lies your growth and your freedom. And I think that's really it. It's like, as you're saying, there's these autopilot responses where we get hijacked, our amygdala takes over, we get these preconditioned responses. And mindfulness is the thing that actually helps us pause and actually notice what's going on before we just cascade all the way down that mountain. We can actually say, oh, okay, what's going on in this moment? And actually, is it just that I'm lonely? Is it that I'm stressed? Is it that my body feels tense? Like, what do I actually need in this moment? Rather than the mind, which just thinks, oh, you're stressed, so you got to go look at porn to push this emotion away.
Yeah. And asking yourself, what do I need right now? Yeah. Well, I have a presentation I'm doing at work tomorrow. What do I need? I'm just going to go double check my notes and make sure that I haven't missed anything. And then I'm going to forget about it and let it go. Okay. That sounds good. That sounds like a healthy response, So when you're into trauma stuff, it's a little more complicated, right? When you're into really deep-seated, unresolved emotions.
Well,
okay?
let's go there. How do you work with that?
Well, we'll pick something that happened. I mean, man, like it's challenging, this work, because sometimes people's lives are so complex and there's so much has happened that, I mean, it's like, where do I go? Where do I start sometimes? Where do I start and where do I go with that? So, because I mean, Jeremy, some people's lives have just been absolutely horrific on every level.
Yeah.
They didn't have one single person that loved them.
Yeah. There was,
No
I
one.
mean, this is I was chatting with a client just the other day and it just hit me so hard, he was dealt just such a bad hand in life,
Oh,
and it's like, of course it makes sense that you would reach out to some coping mechanisms, if that was the hand you were dealt. It's like, yeah,
yeah,
you did what you needed to do to survive and to take care of yourself mentally and
yeah,
emotionally. And
yeah,
now we're trying to put those pieces back together. But of
yeah.
course, those pieces were smashed, when you were younger.
Oh, I know. So I think I just thought of this. So I think probably the difference is take out the extreme trauma. You have just the normal stressors of life and the triggers. And there's people that self-regulate through that and those that can't. So with the more extreme trauma and intense emotion, you're going to teach the grounding techniques and the self-regulation. So that's what they attend to first. So, grounding techniques like 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, breathing. I love breath work. I do breath work. I just taught it to a client this morning. He doesn't know how to breathe, right? Getting him to take 7 or 8 seconds on an in-breath and hold it and 7 or 8 seconds on an out-breath. He's never done that before, right? And he's like, oh, like I did it 3 breaths. He's like, I feel calmer. I'm like, you can do this anywhere, anytime. Because he'll be in a restaurant, which his abuser would drive him to hockey, abuse him, take him out to restaurants. It was all part of the grooming. So now he's sitting in restaurants with his family having sweats and nausea and flashbacks and all that. So I said, okay, here's what you do. So you're grounding 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 5 objects, 4 colors, 3 sounds like that, right? You're going to do some breathing. You're going to self-talk. I'm safe. I'm here. Put your hand here. Breathing, let's get back into your body. That was then, this is now. I'm not in danger, right? So I think with some of the more intense stuff where people are dealing with that, I'm going to spend some time working on that with them, which I guess is all mindfulness too, in a way, right? And teaching them to observe, be the observer. That's really tricky, but very powerful when people get that, right? Like you're not your feelings actually. What do you mean? Well, you're not like they're real, but they're not reality. Like your feelings aren't actually reality. They're just, if you want to really get down to it, they're neurons that are firing in your brain and releasing neurochemicals. That's actually all they are, right? So just getting back to that, observing, talk to yourself in the third person. Oh, I'm experiencing an urge to go masturbate to sexual material right now.
Yeah.
Oh,
The mindful awareness of what's happening.
hold it. Keep holding it. Yeah, keep holding that. Okay. It's a cloud in the sky. You see that cloud going by? That's you with the urge to masturbate to pornography. See it going? Yeah. Or, ride the wave, like whatever analogy, right? So they learn I don't have to act on every impulse. Because when you start working with guys, that's how they live their life. I get an impulse, I just automatically act on it with no conscious thought. They're unconscious. It's like unconsciousness, right?
Yeah. The autopilot response is just very strong there.
Oh, yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about shame, because I think this kind of plays in, both trauma and addiction and shame. And what is the role that shame plays in addiction?
Oh my gosh. I mean, that's a whole other podcast in itself too, right?
Each one of these topics we could do deep dives on, but.
Well, I'll address it on 2 levels. So let's say level 1, someone who's been sexually abused or mistreated or physically or verbally abused has internalized that they're a bad person because they were a child. And so all children do this because adults are godlike figures that can do no wrong. So whenever they're mistreated by an adult, it's not, the child isn't capable cognitively of thinking mom or dad or Uncle Joe or Aunt Lucy are bad people and they're doing something bad. They're not capable developmentally of thinking that, but they are capable of thinking, for some reason, I must have done something bad to deserve this. So they internalize the shame. Okay. So they've been carrying that around in many cases for a long, long time. Okay. So in a sense, anything that they do to validate and confirm the shame becomes, it's very congruent to them. Like that feels very a lot. Like it's kind of weird to say it, but that feels like alignment to their core image of who they are.
Mhm.
Right.
Yeah.
So then there's another level of shame where guys come in, and I say guys because I work with women too, but it's mostly men I work with. But this is where you see like they're kind of generally, we'll call them high functioning, successful adults. Maybe they had good childhoods, okay, but their belief in themselves is eroded to such a degree because they're successful in other areas, most areas of their life, but in this one area, they can't seem to master this. They can't. All the rules go out the window. They keep breaking their promises to themselves. They keep lying to cover it up. They're lying to their wives. They know what's wrong to lie. I never had to convince anyone lying to someone you love is a bad thing. They all know it is, but they still do it. And now they're living a double life and it escalates and then they tell lies to cover other lies, So there's the shame from just the confusion and loss of self-respect, I think. It comes from that. What's wrong with me? Why can't I? I used to think this, right? I'm like, I don't get it. Like I have a wife and kids. I own a townhouse in Richmond Hill. I have a good job. I'm a successful account executive or a manager. I have, but I just can't stop watching pornography. Are you kidding me? What's wrong? There must be something wrong with me. Yeah.
Yeah. There's interesting. It's like when you combine, because shame as an isolated experience is really painful, but then there's almost this secondary component of when it's something, well, like, as you mentioned, there's some high performing, high functioning individuals where it's almost like it's the one thing that's this hidden thing in the closet where the rest of their life is they're professionals, they're well respected, they have, good family. And it's almost when you combine the shame with this imposter syndrome, where it's this hidden thing that if people knew about this one thing, how much more multiplied this shame would be. Because right now I can live under the illusion that at least I'm hiding it. But if people really knew, because that imposter syndrome, that kind of living the double life thing seems to be, quite prevalent for a lot of people.
Well, I remember reading Pat Carnes' 4 core beliefs of a sex addict. I'm a bad, unworthy person is one. Number 2, if you really knew me, you wouldn't like me. Number 3 is I can never trust others to meet my needs. And number 4 is sex is my most important need. And then what happens is addicts eroticize their emotions, so everything becomes sexualized. And that goes back to what I said as a kid, like you feel lonely, rejected, unloved, you masturbate to pornography. You're eroticizing your emotions. That is what you're doing when you do that, right? And so you grew up and now you're, you have a core belief that I'm a bad, unworthy person, but I happen to be good looking and I'm a smooth talker and I can get chicks from the bar to go home with me. So now life essentially becomes about, how many sexual encounters can I have to continually validate my fragile self-esteem?
Yeah. Yeah. It's sort of that kind of that whack-a-mole game. It's like you're constantly just trying to catch up or just trying to fight off the feelings of insecurity or the feelings of unworthiness by, just okay, how can I get as many people to sleep with me or have as many external validations as possible to make me feel a sense of being okay when the core belief is I'm never going to be okay no matter how much I get.
And probably the most insidious consequence of living in shame is you isolate yourself. And so the very thing you need to be free, shame keeps you from doing.
Yeah.
Right. And, when partners ask me like, why did he lie to me? I'd say, well, it's pretty simple. There's 2 reasons. His shame. And he told himself the lie that he couldn't possibly hurt you more by telling you the truth, so you're better off not knowing. Pretty much every guy said that to me, right? But and then once it all comes out, I see guys where 6 months into recovery, 12 months into recovery, their shame still gets triggered, right? They'll be out and they'll be watching a show on TV and maybe a sex scene comes on and the wife looks over and goes, "Oh, I bet you're enjoying this, aren't you? You probably Googled her, hey? You probably jerked off to that skank, didn't you, you bastard?" Right? Like these are things people say, okay? And his shame gets triggered. So I got to teach guys, how to regulate through that, how to hold space for hurt feelings, because otherwise he'll go into defensiveness and anger. So you're dealing with it all the time. You're just dealing with shame all the time. Yeah.
Well, what are some of the best tools for healing shame? Whether it's, strategies, techniques.
Well, tell your story. And this is part of the magic Bill W. discovered with AA group. Like essentially the idea to Bill W. was very simple. We got to get guys together to tell their story. That was before he came up with the steps and all that stuff. It was get together and tell and be accepted. And so I really promote groups a lot with guys, and it's not for everybody. I get it. But listen, hey, you go to a group and you tell your story and you don't die. Like Jeremy, the shame, I think people literally think they'll die if they tell the truth. That's how intense it is.
Have you heard that statistic? That people are more afraid of public speaking than they are of death?
Yeah, I've heard that.
It's that sense of like that shame or being, in the center, having all the eyes on you. It's like we are more afraid of shame than we are of death.
Yeah.
Of that isolation.
You want to hear something wild? I've had guys, more than one guy has told me, after a porn binge, for example, they watch porn, they go out, in public to whatever, get the groceries, and they literally think that everybody that looks at them knows that they just came back from a porn binge.
Yeah.
And they're like, "You disgusting pervert." This is what's going through their mind.
Yeah. And what's crazy, it's on a neurological level. Like it's not even, all the people who know it, they probably know that, that there's no way these people could know that I just watched porn. But it's just the nervous system feels it. The nervous system feels that, oh my gosh, everyone knows I'm a monster. Everyone knows I'm disgusting. It's fascinating.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Did I answer your question? How do I deal with shame? So tell, get support, talk to me. That's a good place. I mean, you probably found this too, where I'm the first person people have told things to in their whole life. And it's very humbling, and I consider it a very privilege, and I'm humbled by that they trust me. And I pretty much start, my first session, I have a little blurb about, listen, I'm unshockable. I've heard it all, and I'm not going to judge you. Okay? Because you hear some pretty out there stuff, right? And so I reassure guys all the time. Like back to our opening comments about shaming people and I'm like, no, I don't know. I don't know who they're talking about. Maybe other people do that. I've never done that. So what else? There's some reframing, like if we look at it from a CBT reframing perspective of, especially when I get into the biology of it, the story, this is what we call like narrative therapy. Like, so we have a story of, I'm a weak, pathetic person that keeps going back to porn with his dick in his hand every time he has a problem. That's their self-narrative. And then that becomes reframed to, because of some difficult challenges in my life and some trauma, I learned to develop a relationship to this behavior where I could find the soothing and comfort that I need. And in that process, the reward system on my brain got hijacked through no knowledge of my own. And it started to, I thought I was driving the car, and I'm starting to realize that someone else was driving the car, and I want to get back in the driver's seat. See how more balanced that is?
Yeah.
and self-accepting it is, right?
Yeah.
So, but that's a process,
Yeah.
right? So I don't know, off the top of my head, that's probably some things I do to deal with it. But
Yeah.
but you know, there's just no substitute for time. Like, just get in a group and share for a year. Go every week for a year. Come see me. And I think too, just information, and people go and listen to other people on YouTube, and maybe guys like you, and they're like, okay, man, there's like thousands of guys like me, and we're all just good guys, normal guys trying to get along, get through life, and it's okay.
Yeah. So that aspect of
Yeah.
realizing you're not alone, realizing you're not the only one.
Oh yeah.
Whereas I
Yeah.
think so many people in the heart of their addiction, they feel like I'm the only one who's messed up. Everyone else
Yeah.
is a normal, has normal sexual appetites and has just got it all together. And I'm this kind of messed up person. But when you start to see,
Right.
oh, there's other people like me, like I'm not alone, that does so much to heal the shame.
Yeah.
And then being
Yeah.
in group. And I love this. There's this quote I heard, I forget, it was by Anne Voskamp, who I don't know who that is, but the quote is, shame dies when stories are told in safe places.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What are some of because I know you've worked with a lot of people, are there any common mistakes that you think you've seen that keep people stuck in their addiction or kind of keep people slipping up or relapsing?
Oh my gosh, there's quite a few. So one, I mean, there's just denial that can go on for years and years. This isn't a problem. And you have to minimize it in order to deny it. Okay. So, and partners come to me astounded, mind-boggled, baffled at how could he do this for 10 years and lie to me? And it's like, well, it's not that complicated, because once you tell yourself something long enough and you actually believe it, it's not that hard. So what she doesn't know won't hurt her. No one's being hurt. And, at least I'm not, say, watching porn. At least I'm not cheating with real women. That's all he needs, really. And then he compartmentalizes that, like men are really good at doing. Women don't understand the compartmentalization thing, because they just have one compartment called relationships and emotions. They don't realize that men's lives are divided up into beer, sex, woman, wife, girlfriend, porn, hockey, work, kids, lacrosse, right?
Yeah. I love the Canadian
they don't-
references coming out in this podcast.
Oh yeah, hockey, maple syrup, moose,
Right.
igloos, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
So the
I've been-
minimizing and kind of denying, but
Yeah.
minimizing is the first
Yeah.
step to denial.
but here's the other thing, Jeremy, and it just came to me the other day again with a new client. The absolute normalization of the objectification and sexualization of women. Okay. Like and when I say absolute, I mean, so a guy, I'm thinking of this is real. All the stories I tell you are based on real people. Obviously, I'm not disclosing any identifying information, right? But a guy grows up, and around 8 or 10, he finds that his dad has Playboy magazines. Okay. So you have to understand that it's not just my dad had Playboy. It's the most important male figure in my life who has God-like status and is literally the embodiment of everything I aspire to be. Keeps a stack of magazines with naked women who are objectified. Not only that, but Uncle Joe, when they go to his place, he has a calendar in the garage of a topless woman. And not only that, but my cousin, Jerry, who's older, has magazines that he got from his dad. I'll just say magazines because, I'm old, but, we'll just go with that, right? And not only that, but, when I went to college and went into the heavy equipment industry, every single guy, without exception, looks at porn, and the shop lunchroom where we eat lunch every day is floor to ceiling pinups and sunshine girls. If you don't know what a sunshine girl is, go look it up. Actually, don't, but it's just, it's page 3 of the newspaper, and it's a cute model. In the UK, they're topless. They're actually topless. And this is a daily newspaper, right? So not only that, 30% of the guys I work with have affairs that they openly talk about. Not only that, every guy I work with goes to the strip club on Friday after work. Not only that, at the hunting camp, everybody watches the porn there and talks about it openly. Not only, like, I could go on and on. So you're now 35 years old, and this is as normal to you as brushing your teeth with Colgate at the end of the day.
So the
Right.
normalization is really a cultural and societal impact as well.
Not a single narrative to the contrary. Like, when I say absolute, I mean not a single human being has ever inputted anything into this person's life, even bringing a remote critical analysis of pornography or the objectification of women on any level.
Do you feel
It's
that's changing?
Absolute.
You
It
know,
is now.
with voices like yours, like mine, like there's a lot of
Yes.
people in this space who I think
Yeah.
there is, I mean, it's you know, there's a lot of counter narrative. Obviously, it's a small drop in the bucket compared to what's been out there for the last 100 years, but it does feel like something's starting to shift.
Well, no, you're right. And like, when I share these stories, these are guys talking about 10, 20 years ago,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Okay.
In their formative
So-
years,
so-
especially.
Formative years. And for me, I mean, it was, my stepdad had porn. My dad had porn. My grandfather ran a drive-in theater and showed X-rated movies. Those were some of his best nights. My uncle had porn. Like, I was just, I guess that's what everyone looks at. Right.
Mhm.
So, I had a couple counter narratives to that,
Yeah.
but essentially, it was normalized. But yeah, I mean, and I love it when celebrities like Terry Crews, you know who that is?
Oh, yeah.
Big black jack guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, he openly talks about his struggle with pornography. Like,
Yeah.
all everywhere, social
Such,
media,
I mean, such a
fighting the
role
drug.
model. It's such a great
I
guy.
love it.
Yeah.
I love it. Yeah. So yeah, there's a bit of a counter narrative starting to come out, and people saying that, hey, this isn't the greatest thing. And then even like from a philosophical point, the Jordan Petersons of the world, and like
Mhm.
Andrew Huberman, the neuroscientist, like
Mhm.
Andrew Huberman, just a straight neuroscientist,
Yeah.
is like, this unearned dopamine is terrible for you.
Yeah. And this is what
Terrible.
I really do feel that, more and more people are starting to address it with an objective lens or with the counter narrative lens of saying, hey, let's take a moment and look at,
Mhm.
is this thing actually healthy? And maybe it's not as innocuous as we once thought as a society.
Mhm.
I'm
Mhm.
curious, just my last question for you, because I want to be respectful
Yeah.
of your time. I know you got to go.
I got 3 minutes, unfortunately, but
Well, my last question for you would be, if there's someone out there who is struggling, and let's just take an example of someone who is not in denial. They know they need to change and they want to change, but they just
No.
feel kind of stuck in their recovery.
No.
Like they
No.
get some streaks going or some progress, then they relapse. Is there any advice that you would have for someone who's in that position?
yeah, recovery is a team sport. Okay. So get some help. Okay. If you could have quit this on your own, and guys do, okay, you would have by now. So I'll say, if you're on your, let's just say, third go around, I'm just pulling a number up here. If you're on your third time of, I really got to quit, and, I'm doing a few different things and self-binding behaviors, and I have a filter, and I'm telling, and you're still shit in the bed, then get some help. Coach, therapy, call Jeremy, call me, get in a group and get some help. Because I'm telling you, there's a lot of guys out there in the same boat as you. You can change. It is possible. Don't give up hope. But listen, Tiger Woods had a golf coach. Okay. We all need help. If Tiger Woods needs a golf coach, I don't need to, what else do I need to say?
Yeah.
Okay. Why? Because he can't see himself swinging. He needs someone to give him input. And, guys like me and you, I'm sure, you're a coach, I'm a therapist, we've been down this road. Are you a recovering guy?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Like, yeah, same. So listen, we know what we're talking about and we've been there. Okay. And we can help you.
Mhm.
And, I have a structure and a process I use. I'm sure you have a structure and a process. You need a structure and a process.
Yeah.
There. I should have just said that right off the bat. There you go.
Well, I think in my mind, those are both things, because some people, you can have structure and a process without the team sport aspect. But I really do feel that,
Sure.
that getting accountability, being seen
Yeah.
by others, like, is such a vital
Yeah.
component and I think you're right.
Yeah.
Some people can do it on their own, but unless it actually worked, to not just keep trying that again and
Yeah.
again and again, but to say, hey, I
Yeah.
actually do need to get some support.
Yeah.
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 Cool. All right. Last question. Where can people get in touch with you?
Sure. You can go to my website, Turning Point for Me. So Turning Point, the number 4 me.com.
All right. Well, we'll be sure
And,
to link all that
just-
in the show notes and make sure everybody gets the
Yeah.
links to that.
Hey, it was a great chat, Jeremy. Thanks for having me on. Let's do it again.
Yeah. We'll have a round 2 in the new year for sure.
Okay.
All right,
Okay.
Paul.
Sounds good.
Have a good one.
Have a great day.
All right.
Okay,
Thanks,
bye.
everyone. Take care.